Hey, it's Seth. Before we get started, I want to take a quick moment to mention a way you can support the Concrete Logic podcast. Whether you're looking to expand your concrete knowledge or want to keep the show going, check out the Concrete Logic Academy, concretelogicacademy.com. You can always make a donation directly at concretelogicpodcast.com. Any amount helps, and we truly appreciate your support. Now let's get into today's episode.
What's the most used man-made material on Earth? I'll give you the answer. Concrete. This is the Concrete Logic Podcast. Have you ever stopped to think about the sidewalks, driveways, bridges, or the buildings around you? They're all made from concrete. So why don't we discuss it more? In each episode of Concrete Logic, we'll explore a unique concrete-related topic with the help of industry professionals shaping the trade's future. We'll talk with suppliers, contractors, architects, engineers, specialists, and even proponents of competing materials. We'll get their views on concrete and their visions for its future. So get ready to mix things up with Concrete Logic, where we turn the spotlight on the material that's everywhere but often overlooked. This is the Concrete Logic Podcast. And now, here's your host, Seth Tandett.
And welcome to another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. No guests today. I wanted to guess a paper that you see, oftentimes you see cited when it comes to Type 1L cement or Portland Limestone Cement, PLC. And I just got curious. I wanted to actually read one of these papers, like I said, is oftentimes cited, and just see, kind of dig into it and see what it is. So you're going to do that with me today. If we get some good feedback, we'll continue to do this, but I've been doing this on my own and thought I'd share what I found in this particular report. So with that, we'll get started here. Let me share a screen. So if you are watching on YouTube, you can kind of follow along. If not, I'm going to do my best to explain what we're doing here. So this paper, it's called the State-of-the-Art Report on Use of Limestone in Cements at Levels of Up to 15% by Tennis, Thomas, and Weiss. It was originally published in 2010 by the Portland Cement Association, and then it was updated in 2024 by the same authors. But for what's kind of funny, I guess, funny to me, in the 2024 report, it references this 2011 version. So I'm just going to stick with this old version, 2011 version, since the 2024 version is referencing it. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's what we're going to look at today. And essentially all I want to do is, I'm not going to give my opinion on it. I'm just pulling things that are in the paper. I assume most folks aren't reading these things. I just went through and was pulling out things that I thought were interesting. So with that, let's move forward here. So yeah, here's the front of the paper here. Like I said, it's called the State-of-the-Art Report on Use of Limestone and Cements at Levels Up to 15%. Just the disclaimer here that these are, again, I'm not gonna give my opinion on anything in this episode, but the views expressed are my own and do not reflect my employer's position. This podcast is for educational purposes only, not engineering or legal advice. So please just keep that in mind as you're listening. Like I said, this report is oftentimes cited. So, for example, here, this is the NRMCA CIP 45 on Portland Limestone Cement. It references this report. This is a This was from a cement manufacturer. They cited this paper as well. This was a document that they published not too long ago. I believe this is a 2023. And again, they referenced this report. And again, here's another one. This was actually from the Federal Highway, I think, was it FHA? Federal Highway Authority. And they reference it as well. So in the paper itself, they tell us about the positives of PLC. So the positives of PLC, it outlines it can be 15%, up to 15% limestone can be used effectively, and how increasing fineness and proper optimization can help maintain strength. There's lab results that are presented in the paper that match or outperform OPC, or Portland cement, regular Portland cement. It highlights meaningful environmental advantages, reducing CO2 emissions by 5 to 15%, depending on formulation and application. And so those are the positive aspects of PLC that are presented in this paper. Again, so let's dig into some of the things that you're probably not hearing that were presented in this paper. Again, just wanted to present the positives that we hear about type 1L cement, Portland cement, or Portland Limestone Cement, so PLC. But within this paper too, there's things in there that aren't so positive, so they caution as well. So one of them is that the strength can drop if the limestone isn't optimized. So this is a figure that is in the report. So if you look at this, they're showing, if you look at this red, it's a chart here. Essentially what it's showing you is the more limestone you at some point you put in too much limestone and you lose strength. So this is in the report. So they caution on that as well. So it demonstrates that both the limestone content and fineness influence strength outcomes. So it cautions without careful quality control and proportioning, strength reductions are possible, particularly in mixes with high limestone content and insufficient grinding. So again, this is in the report. Moving on. So there's some information about sulfate resistance decreases. So in this, again, here's another chart. In the report, it shows that mortars with 20% limestone experience higher expansion when immersed in a 5% sodium sulfate solution, especially with those with higher limestone content. So that's a lot of gibberish to me. What this is indicating is lower sulfate resistance in PLC mixes can happen under aggressive sulfate exposure conditions. It's what happens is as you add more limestones, it may increase the vulnerability in environments like sulfate-rich soils or groundwater. So again, if the mix isn't optimized, so sulfite resistance can lead to long-term deterioration. So again, not a good thing. Again, this is in the report. The next thing in here, I want to point out carbonation depth increases. So this chart that's in the report shows that limestone content, as it increases, carbonation depth also increases, especially in mixes designed with equal water to cement ratios. what this means is concrete may become more vulnerable to a pH drop and steel corrosion over time, particularly if it's poorly cured, which we've talked about a lot on the podcast, or has lower strength. So it's a trend that's noticeable when PLC is used without adjusting the mix to maintain compressive strength. This makes curing and strength development even more critical for long-term durability. This matters for long-term durability in exposed or reinforced concrete applications. Next is shrinkage. So found this interesting here. This is a paragraph within the report, and it's actually talking about volume stability. But if you look within that paragraph, something that stood out to me, it states that the total deformation due to creep and shrinkage over 360 days was significantly lower by 17% on average for concretes produced with Portland cement compared to those that were produced with Portland Limestone Cement. The authors concluded that this was due to the reduced volume of cement gel available to resist the compressive stress in concrete containing PLC or Portland Limestone Cement. So, the study, this paper actually cites other papers, other studies that are done, and that's what this is doing right here. And this particular study warns that PLC essentially may be more prone to long-term volume change. So, if the concrete volume is changing, it's shrinking, that can lead to cracking, curling, things that are not aesthetically pleasing to the eye, or even serviceability concerns. The, slabs or pavements or whatever it is won't hold up and won't perform like it's designed. The next one was permeability. So the permeability results are kind of mixed in this report. Again, like I started with, there's positives pointed out in this report, but there's also negatives and things that they're cautioning us about by using Portland Limestone Cement or Type 1L. So this report is pointing to another study, and in this study, they found that increasing limestone content raised chloride diffusion, especially at higher water cement ratios. So that's what this first table showing here. And then, but another study, the table below here, it showed that PL mixes blended with 30% slag had even lower diffusion than traditional Portland cement. So again, confusing and kind of contradicting studies here that, Portland Limestone Cement or PLC can increase permeability if not properly optimized, a common theme in this paper. But then you could offset that with SEMs like slag, which may actually reduce the permeability. And again, it says performance depends on mix design and exposure conditions. So again, contradictory information here. Another thing we often hear this is that Europe has been using Portland Limestone Cement for decades. So isn't the U.S. on board? So just a couple things that the paper points out again. So Europe has a different climate than the U.S. And although they have used it longer than the U.S. has, their whole curing practices are different than ours. And they also have a different labor force as well, different trained labor force. So, but even in this report, acknowledges Europe's success with PLC, but it does say, given that European and Canada, it also talks about Canada, requirements are based on limited studies, at least back then when this initial report was put out. Consideration should be given to establishing alternate criteria to assure the limestone used in Portland cement will not compromise performance. There's also other things too. Some things I thought were interesting. I've never worked in Europe. Obviously, I've done my entire career in the U.S. Europe uses performance-based specifications, which this report points out, which, we don't use that in the United States. It's more prescriptive specifications. So that's a big difference and must be considered when someone points out, hey, they've used Portland limestone cement for decades. Again, I mentioned this already. I kind of jumped ahead, but the curing practices are different. So moist curing is more widely enforced in Europe. For instance, in Germany or the Netherlands, it's not uncommon to see strict enforcement of 7-day moist curing, especially for public infrastructure, which, to be fair, we do have that in the U.S. I've seen specs for public jobs where it clearly states a 7-day moist cure, but I don't think that is as widely adopted as it is in Europe. At least that's what the paper is stating. And the big deal about that is that using PLC, it's more sensitive to that, and we've talked about that on the podcast before. It's more sensitive to your curing practice. So it's something to note. Again, I mentioned this. Europe has milder climates. The coast of France is much different than, Michigan winters or Arizona sulfates or the humidity in the Mid-Atlantic or the Gulf Coast. So again, the paper points this out, but I'm just giving you some examples there. The construction timelines are slower, particularly in public works. And so there's difference in our construction methods and our labor force and those and the climate. So we got to consider that. But another thing I thought was interesting, again, I found this figure or chart in the paper. What was interesting is, I guess I when I hear people say, hey, they've been using PLC in Europe for decades, and they make it sound like that's all they use. But back when this report was published, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm showing on a chart here where it shows all the different cements that are used in Europe on this study. And this particular study that the paper's referencing is from 2007. They're essentially showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different cements that are used in Europe, including Portland cement. The Portland limestone, it shows the trend of use from 1999 to 2004. And back in 1999, Europe used, it shows 15%. And then by 2004, it's 31%. But that's, so it's only used about not even a third of the cement use in Europe. So I thought that was interesting. And maybe I was naive, and I thought when they say, hey, Europe uses this stuff, I was thinking it was used a lot, but it's it wasn't widely adopted back when this report was initially put out. So, yeah. So, I mean, essentially the takeaways from this report is, again, this initial report was back in 2011, and I know we're in 2025 now, and that report has been updated last year in 2024. But the 2024 version is, again, it references 2011. To me, it's important to read these documents, even these older documents, because those are the ones that kind of laid the foundation for us to make this change to Type 1L cement. So I think it's important to read these documents and see what they're what's within them, because again, like I'm pointing out today, is there are positives. It points out the positives, but there are some cautions or negatives in there that we need to take a look at. And a lot of these studies are lab based. There's not a lot of U.S. specific data. I know the 2024 is, and maybe we need to go look at that one and see what they have. But the data is going to be fairly new because we haven't been using it that long. Even if they said, hey, back in 2011 when this paper was published initially, we were using limestone. In the paper itself, it makes reference to, hey, even in the U.S. at the time, we were using 5% limestone. And so, limestone's been around. But, now we're using a higher percentage of that than we were back then. So, we're up to, depending on where you are in the country, up to 15%. So, but yeah, so again, I'm not trying to be critical. I think it's something that we can do to look at these papers and just actually see what's in them. I know it's not a very exciting thing to do. And I appreciate the folks that do this for a living and are able to read these things and stay awake. It's kind of brutal going through this, but anyways, I appreciate you guys sticking with me today. Again, if you all, let me know if this is something you want to continue to do, and we'll continue to look into these documents and see what we can find together. And so until next time, let's keep it concrete.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. If you got value from the show, here's how you can provide value back to support the show. Visit concretelogicpodcast.com and click the donate button to send value back. All dollar amounts are truly appreciated. And now, to close out the show, here's Mike Dunton.
That alarm always sings couple hours before the sun comes up. Open up the side, put some diesel in the lights and wait till the trucks roll up. Yeah, this ain't how most folks live their lives, dripping in sweat, working overtime. But while their time, their ties for their 9 to 5s, we're